We are surely very familiar with the image of Ganesha, the elephant-headed god. He is one of the most beloved and recognizable figures in the world. We see him as the remover of obstacles, the patron of the arts and sciences. But what if I told you that his true story is not that of a being who was simply born divine? In fact, it is quite a violent story. The story of a child who was beheaded by his own father. And this is where it all gets fascinating. Because that story, which sounds so tragic, is actually an incredibly profound metaphor. It is like a map of the journey of the human soul, a journey that takes us from ignorance to wisdom and teaches us that the spiritual path is ultimately a path back home, back to ourselves. Well, to understand this journey, we have to start at the beginning. His parents, Shiva and Parvati, they represent that cosmic dance between pure consciousness and the energy it creates. But their union was not always so harmonious. Parvati, considered the mother of the universe, felt deeply lonely at heart. Imagine this. Her husband, the great god Shiva, spent, eons absorbed in his meditation. He was distant on another plane of existence, beyond the earthly realm. Parvati, for her part, longed for a connection, a purpose she could feel as her own. And in that search, she came to a conclusion. If she couldn't find that fulfillment in her partner, she would surely find it in a child. So, with her own power, she molded a figure out of clay and simply breathed life into it. This child became the absolute center of her universe, her only source of happiness. And Ganesha, in turn, became his mother's devoted guardian. For 12 long years, while she bathed, he stood guard at the entrance, protecting the little world they had created. He did not know his father. For him, his mother was everything. And it is right here in this almost perfect scenario of mother and son that the story takes a dramatic and irrevocable turn. After years of absence, Shiva, the great meditator, decides to return home. He had no idea that, in his absence, a son had been born. As he approaches his home, he encounters this young man who blocks his way. Ganesha tells him, "Stop! No one can pass." Shiva, the Lord of the universe, is baffled by this stranger in his own home and tries to move forward. Ganesha, with unwavering loyalty, stands in his way again. And here's the key. Neither recognizes the other. To the child, he is an intruder. For the god, it is an insult. Tension escalates in an instant. And in a fit of divine rage, Shiva draws his trident and decapitates the child. It is a brutal, shocking moment, but if we look at it symbolically, what has just died is not just a child. It is a limited identity, a consciousness attached to the known. It is, in essence, the death of the ego. Parvati's cry is one of fury and pain that we cannot even imagine. She demands that Shiva return her son, the only source of her happiness. And Shiva, with a calmness that goes beyond the tragedy, promises that he will. But of course, not in the way that she or anyone else could expect. This is the crucial point of the whole story. Shiva, who here acts as the divine teacher, does not return the child's original head. Instead, he asks for the head of the first creature they find, a baby elephant. This symbolizes something very profound. The human head represented manas, the sensory mind, the one that reacts, the one that clings to the world of appearances. In contrast, the elephant's head represented buddhi, the higher intellect, the wisdom that knows how to discern the truth. It is the eternal dialogue between impulse and clarity. Does this not resonate with human experience? Then Shiva attaches the elephant's head to the child's body and breathes life into him again. This is the true birth of Ganesha, his second birth. He is no longer his mother's son, dependent on the outside world to know who he is. Now, he is an incarnation of wisdom itself. But this new wisdom could not simply be a gift. It had to be proven, earned. The story does not end with his rebirth. In fact, this is when the real challenges begin. And the first comes in the form of a golden fruit. Suddenly, the sage Narada appears with a golden mango containing nothing less than the nectar of eternal knowledge. But there is one condition. It is indivisible, only one person can eat it. To decide who deserves it, a test is proposed for Ganesha and his brother, the swift Kartikeya. The first to circle the world 3 times will win the mango. Kartikeya, the god of war, riding his peacock, shoots off. He represents the external search, action, the idea that knowledge is something out there that must be pursued. Ganesha, however, with his new intellect, remains still, thoughtful. His path is different, that of inner realization. He does not seek to acquire wisdom. He seeks to embody it. After a moment of reflection, Ganesha gets up, approaches his parents, Shiva and Parvati, and simply walks around them 3 times. When they ask him what he has done, his answer is sublime. You are my universe, the source of everything. By circling you, I have circled more than the entire world. He understood that the origin of everything, consciousness and energy, was right there. He didn't need to go anywhere. And this is a brilliant illustration of Ganesha's mastery. Notice that even his vehicle, a humble mouse, has a profound meaning. The mouse represents the restless mind, those fleeting desires and thoughts that distract us all the time. By riding on it, Ganesha shows us that true wisdom does not seek to eliminate those small parts of ourselves, but to master them, guide them, and use them as a vehicle. Ganesha's final test consolidates him not only as a wise being, but as the scribe of the cosmos. It turns out that the great sage Vyasa needs someone to transcribe the Mahabharata, one of the longest and most profound epic poems ever created, the story of humanity itself. And of course, who better than the embodiment of wisdom for this monumental task? But both are put to the test. Ganesha demands that Vyasa dictate without stopping for a second so that the flow of knowledge is pure. And Vyasa demands that Ganesha not write a single syllable that he has not fully understood. So the cosmic dictation begins. But in the midst of this universal transmission, a crisis occurs. Ganesha's pen breaks. The flow of universal wisdom cannot stop, must not stop, and Ganesha, without a moment's hesitation, makes a decision that will define him forever. He reaches up to his face, pulls out one of his own tusks, and, using it as a pen, continues writing. This act is not mutilation. It is the ultimate surrender. It is a sacrifice in the name of Dharma, of the higher purpose, of the truth. It shows that in order to preserve and transmit universal knowledge, sometimes it is necessary to sacrifice a part of oneself. And this incredible act of sacrifice forces us to look inward, to ask ourselves a fundamental question. What is that broken tusk in our own experience? Ganesha's entire journey, from his decapitation to his sacrifice, teaches us a universal truth. Wisdom does not come for free. It requires renunciation. Real growth requires leaving something behind, whether it be a habit, a comfort, a belief that limits us, or, as in his case, a part of one's own ego. So the question the story leaves us with is not about an ancient god, but about our own path. What have we given up for a greater purpose? What conscious sacrifices have led us to experience a different degree of awareness, wisdom, or compassion? Because it is in those renunciations very often that we find our true second birth